You are listening to The Edge, a podcast for personal development junkies and visionaries living right at the precipice of oh shit meets fuck yeah. I'm Nadia, an embodiment and relationship coach and a lover of all edges. Stick around to listen to raw, unpolished conversations where we explore our personal and collective edges in all their erotic glory.
Hold on to your horses because we are about to talk about Barbie. And let me tell you, I know that we are all across the board. The entire spectrum is represented of opinions around Barbie. And I've got a lot to say as well. And my number one gripe around the Barbie stuff is actually about the gender relations piece, not so much what I think others think about when they think about Barbie and whether they love or hate Barbie. And I'll start with this. I don't love or hate Barbie. I loved Barbie when I was a kid. That shit was, you have to understand, I lived in Lebanon. We did not have many options. It was the war. And I actually don't remember what years I started playing with Barbie, but my father had a friend at Mattel and he used to go on business trips and he'd come back with a new Barbie and it was like the best day ever. I don't know that my sisters were that into Barbie. I don't know, they were a little bit more tomboyish than me. I was 100% the girly girl, loved the pink, loved the outfit, just loved everything about Barbie. So I was like a hardcore Barbie fan as a child. Obviously started to grow up, started to understand the problematic pieces around, her body type, and it never even occurred to me. I was like, oh yeah, she's blonde and thin, like cool, whatevs. And then of course, started to understand the implications of what it means to body image pieces for women and young girls. And then at the same time was like, and how cool that Barbie can also have all these jobs that usually men would have when I was growing up. So I would say even early on, like once I started to wake up to things, probably in my late teens and was like reflecting back, I saw both the upsides to Barbie and also the downsides, right? Like the fact that it's like, okay, on some level there is a feminist quality to this that's really awesome. And on the other hand, it's like, it's like it's nearly like the patriarchy wrapped up in like a cute little outside costume of feminism. And I would say that the movie actually spoke to some pieces of that quite clearly. I'm going to mainly dive into gender relations and the problems I had with the movie and the portrayal of the relationship between men and women, because I'm such an advocate for deep intimacy between men and women in the world. And I think that this movie actually took us back a lot. And that was my biggest challenge with it. But before I get into that, I want to just give a little bit of like an overlay of things, right? So first of all, I went to Barbie the weekend it came out. My friend was like, hey, you want to go? I was like, fuck yeah, I want to go. Understanding fully the implications of what I was saying yes to, because on the one hand, there's like my little girl that's like, oh my God, a Barbie movie. Like this is going to be escapist fun. Another part of me was like, I knew Greta Gerwig was going to be directing, and I've known of her and her work ever since Mumblecore, which was a genre, gosh, I think in the 2000s, something like that. I used to be in film, so I like went through a phase where I got really into like indie film and very particular like super niched subgenres, and she was in one of those. And so I knew like this was going to be an interesting take on Barbie because I knew one, it wasn't going to be super traditional. Two, there would 100% be an incredibly like feminist, uh, particular flavor of like woke liberal energy to it, which I, and what ended up happening, and I sort of had a feeling was going to happen. I'm both like, yes, and also I'm like, oh God, this is really not good. Like it's both in my system, which is how I feel about a lot of the more liberal woke rhetoric these days, is that they're based on some beautiful values that are really important, and at the same time it's extremism in one direction, and I'm not a fan of extremism in either direction. So there's that. I knew going in there was going to be an interesting take, but I wasn't sure how she was. I was like so fascinated and excited about like what is she going to do with this? Because we're now in 2023. Obviously, the quote unquote feminism that Barbie brought to the table in the 80s and 90s was like dip your toe in the water feminism, right? Like it was like as far as society was available for it. And it, as the movie actually showed, like all these men were in the boardroom, right? So there is this like, it's really this tainted, it's the version of feminism that a group of men around a round table would think is progressive. And it took one step in the right direction, but I mean, it's, let's be real, like that is not super progressive in any way. And I will argue that the portrayal of gender relations tried to be extra progressive in this movie, but actually there is a level of progression that the progressives have not clicked into, and that they see as, and I'll just speak, I guess I'll speak just to the, you know, the directing and creative team of the movie, right? Let's not get like, I mean, not just like blow it up into speaking on behalf of all progressives, because that's not fair. But the creatives of this movie felt that their portrayal of gender relations was progressive, right? Because they're trying to bring out this like new and updated Barbie 2023. Look at us. We are so ahead of our time. We've like upgraded Barbie from the 80s and the 90s. And it's like, there's another step to go. And it's a step in the direction they would never imagine. And I think this is actually what is setting us back so much. So we've established that Barbie in itself is confusing. And that's part of why people are so extreme one way or the other. Where it's like, okay, well, she's thin and blonde, but also can do all this cool stuff. And then, of course, after the fact, they brought in different body shapes a little bit. But I mean, that took a really long time. They brought in different hair color before that and things like that. But like, it was a slow process. So I'm not here to talk too much about the body image piece, but let's be real, like that factored in hugely into the process of just creating a lot of issues, right, for young girls around body image. And maybe still does. Like I was actually surprised. I'm like, is Barbie still a thing like nowadays? Apparently it is, I guess. I don't know. I thought like I literally thought they had phased that shit out in the 90s. I did not realize, you know, I also don't have kids, so I haven't been in like a toy store or the toy aisle in forever. So I don't even know, is there like a Barbie section? I'm clueless, you guys. But my little girl was really excited to go see Barbie. My adult was really interested in what take the director would have on upgrading the feminism of Barbie. And I was also really curious to see, okay, how much of like a rhetoric that was gonna like make me want to vomit was gonna appear in this movie. And of course, Ryan Gosling, even though he does not look good blonde, but it's Ryan Gosling, you guys. Like, he hasn't been in a movie in a long time, and so that was exciting too. So I will say I was very entertained by this movie. It was fun, it was colorful, it gave me everything I need when I go to the movie theater to just be entertained. So I give them an A plus on the entertainment. I give them an A plus on the production design. Holy, oh my God, just so the costumes, the whole setup, the colors were, I loved it. I also, appreciate, like I was saying earlier, the piece around them really owning up to the fact that Mattel in itself was run by all these men, and that there's this like weird way in which they were so excited about the feminism, quote unquote, of Barbie, when in fact it was sort of just like an extension of patriarchy light. And so all of that I'm down with. And I also like to not take things too seriously. So part of it too was like, just go have fun, enjoy what was cool and controversial in the 80s, and like stop over analyzing, dissecting, and like having an opinion about everything, right? Like I'm like, just enjoy it and stop. But at the same time, I have an opinion about a lot of things, and I am aware of the hypocrisy and the consumerism and the fact that, this is a movie that essentially is a marketing machine for product. And so all of these I'm very, very well aware of. But again, because of me looking at things through the lens of intimacy and gender relations, my number one thing that I focused on was how they were portraying men. And so I feel like, okay, we understand the body image piece. I feel like collectively as a society, we are past that point. We understand that that was just not cool, right? To have like a thin blonde chick, white too. Let's not forget that part. Which they did, again, they started to like course correct, but not from a place I think of true organic desire, but more because they were like trying to appear like progressive. So it struck me from the moment that Ken was introduced how much of an idiot he basically was. It was like a total airhead. And at first I was like, okay, Nadia, but like some people's, like you get, like a movie gets to have a character where someone's sort of not very bright. And like that doesn't mean it's all the men, but then it quickly became very clear as the plot continued. And I'm going to try not to spoiler alert this, or to not spoiler alert, to spoil this in any way. We'll see. We'll see how well I do with that. But if you haven't watched it, you may want to proceed a little bit with caution, depending on how much information you would like to have before watching a movie. You know what? I'll officially say spoiler alert at this point. So maybe just if you haven't watched it and you plan to, you may want to pause on this and come back after you've seen it. It's also going to make a lot more sense. So yeah, let's do that. So, so in the movie, right, both Barbie and Ken end up in the real world. So there's Barbie Land, there's the real world. They both end up on this mission in the real world. And Ken realizes in the real world that men are treated really differently than in Barbie Land, because it shows up very early in the movie, right? Like that Barbie Land is like the women's empire. They're doing everything. The president is a woman. Everyone who matters is a woman. And the men are just sort of there. Essentially, when you think about patriarchy reversed, right? Like a trophy wife, or yeah, just sort of like they're just there, and none of them are bright. It's not just Ken, like the entire men, all the men are just sort of like, what? I don't know. The women know better, right? Like it's like they're very much just sort of buffoons walking around that look hot, but don't really know anything. And the women are very uninterested in these men. Like, they're like, ugh. Like, there's a scene early on with Barbie and Ken where he's like, oh, I thought maybe I could sleep over. And she's like, why? And he's like, I don't know. And so the whole thing, like from the beginning, is there's a lot of like rejection of the men because they are sort of dumb and the women don't need them. And it's just like, that's Barbie land culture. And then Ken goes to the real world and he's like, wait a second, someone asked me for the time. And suddenly he has this moment of feeling respected, right? Because someone asked him for the time, which we know is like, that is a joke in the movie that, oh, that's not even a form of respect, but cool, if that's how much you're disrespected in Barbie land, that just being asked the time has you feel powerful and seen and respected, is like quite a commentary, right, on the difference between the two worlds. And so, the joke is that I think he like walks into a library or something and picks up all these books on like horses and the patriarchy. And so it, of course, reminds us of the Marlboro Man, which was a huge symbol back in the day around Barbie time, like when Barbies became quite big, because we used to still advertise smoking in the 80s and early 90s. I remember this in my childhood. And so there's the Marlboro. So now it's like the Marlboro Man, who's the like total machismo patriarchy symbol, versus Barbie, who's like supposedly the feminist symbol. And so he brings patriarchy back to Barbie land, and this whole, adventure ensues where the women try to take back, like basically kill the patriarchy and take back Barbie land and their power. And you all know, anyone who's read a post of mine or two, has listened to any of these podcast episodes, knows how much I'm like, fuck the patriarchy, right? Like, that is a huge part of what I think is problematic in the world and what has gotten us to where we are. So patriarchy as a system, I'm all about crushing it. I'm all about taking it down. The problem is when we get into a binary, which I think is hilarious, because if there is anyone who is talking about non-binary, it's the liberals. And yet, here we see an example of them going into full fucking binary, where they're like, oh, there's Barbie land where the women are, powerful, or there's the patriarchy where the idiotic men are powerful and fucking shit up. Okay, well, what about the third option? Why is it? I really want us to think about this. Why is it that the only way for Barbie to feel empowered is to make Ken an idiot? I'm going to say that again. Why is it that the only way to make Barbie feel empowered is to make Ken an idiot? Can we have Barbie empowered and Ken empowered? How about that? Why is that not even an option in the movie and in the rhetoric and in this exploration that is supposedly, so progressive and ahead of its time and upgraded from the old archaic ways? And I'm like, oh, this is exactly the problem I am having with the, quote unquote, woke liberal rhetoric and opinions, is that in a certain way you think you are as progressive as can be, but you are tapping right back into black and white binary thinking. And to me, what's actually truly evolutionary, I'm not going to call it progressive because then it's going to confuse us all, but let's call it evolutionary, is to go, it's not about one gender at the top. It's about us co-creating. It's about us being in harmony, in union. Why does it have to be that the women are taking power? I mean, that in and of itself is a very masculine, archaic system. if we think about the true, like, the cultures that have like matriarchy to the core, that are have a lot of feminine values, and to their core, there is no hierarchy. It's circular. The feminine is in itself holistic, circular, communal, love based. It's not a freaking triangle and you're trying to get to the top. Hi, love. Just wanted to take a moment out of this conversation to let you know there are so many ways to start your embodiment and intimacy journey. It is not necessarily having to work privately in a coaching container with me. There is a whole page on nadiamunla.com under the tab Self-Study that is dedicated to anyone who's looking to just start their journey. So whether it's an embody at home class that you want to start to bring into your morning or evening routine to just move the energy, to explore your different feminine archetypes, or maybe it's something in the world of intimacy and sexuality. I've got master classes from everything around energetic sex to exploring monogamish type relationships and lots more. So definitely go take a look at the page, nadiamunla.com, and then go to the tab that's self-study. And for those of you who are here on this podcast listening, I've gotten so many DMs from beautiful, devoted listeners sharing with me how much of an impact these conversations have had. And I really just wanted to give back the love with a special 50% off code. So if you go to the checkout on any of the classes that are there and you put in podcast love, all one word, in the coupon code on the way out, right? You will get that 50% off as a thank you from me. I am so fired up around the topic of embodiment and intimacy that I can't not nudge you in the direction of actually getting into the practices, and that is the place to start. So definitely go check that out. And of course, if you do want to work privately with me, that is always an option. Just shoot me an email, nadia@nadiamunla.com. Let me know what you're looking for. Everything from, you can start with a single session. And if you let me know you're from the podcast, I'll give you 50% off on that single session as well. And so we can talk more about that over email. So either DM me at nadiamunla.com on Instagram or shoot me an email, nadia@nadiamunla.com. I will see you there. Now back to the episode. There's no pyramid scheme. There's no hierarchy. There's no climbing the ladder. That doesn't exist. That is in itself a very archaic, masculine, patriarchal structure. This is exactly the problem. So my problem with this movie is less about body image and whatever, all these things, and the fact that, yeah, it's pink and marketing to have us all buy more Barbies. Like, yes, these are all like some problems too, but the big problem is that I wonder, are there people questioning the fact that it's so freaking binary, and that we somehow think that in order for us to feel empowered as women, and I want us to all feel empowered as women, and yes, it's true, there was something so freaking awesome about Barbie coming out at a time, I think, who was it? What's her name? Alexandra. Ooh, I feel like I'm going to kill her name. AOC. What is it? Alexandra Cortez. It's okay, you guys. Just don't mind me not knowing politicians' names. You guys know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like, so I'm pretty sure that she was the one that said, well, Barbie was a doctor before women could even own their own credit cards. And that shit's true. We forget that was not that long ago, where women couldn't even have their own bank accounts without their husbands saying yes and giving them permission. And so, yeah, on some level, there is something about Barbie that does hold a code of empowerment, so to speak, right? Like, there was something in there, a thread of like, wow, this is cool. We're imagining a different world. But like, we're in 2023. it's been like 30, 40 years. We are way more nuanced and evolved than that. And we now understand that it is not about one gender winning. It's not about like, oh, you guys were in power for 10,000 years. We're going to be as petty as you. And now we're going to take over and you all can, you're all exiled to wherever. And even at the end, like Barbie was not into Ken. Like at the end of the movie, she still wasn't into him. Is that the world we want to live in? Where Barbie's like, no matter what Ken does, like she's not going to be into him? Because that is literally what is happening in the world. There's all these like feminist women who are like, I can do it on my own. And then they're over there like looking at the men like, oh, you guys are all such idiots and I can do better. And look at me, I'm the CEO of this company and I make 10 times more money than you. And like, what are you even good for? I can go to a sperm bank if I want a kid, right? Like there is a lot of that energy. I'm not saying it's everyone, but there is a lot of that in the ethos in our culture these days in the Western world. And it is literally why people are no longer having good sex. You have to look at men, and especially your man, as like, wow, you are this powerful hero. And I'm not saying it's going to be every moment of the day, okay? But the overall view is like, wow, oh my God, thank you. That not a single Barbie was saying thank you to the Kens, no one. Instead, it was like, haha, we got our world back. Also, we don't need sex. What? Sex is the foundation of our entire existence. In the movie, no one has sex. Is that the world we want to live in? Because that is what happens when we choose the binary. That's what happens when we go, oh, in order for me to feel empowered, I have to make you feel stupid. Forget about gender for a moment. Right? Let's say it's not even about men, women. The ethos, the general attitude of I have to put you down for me to feel higher up is the problem. We saw this in the entire conversation, during 2020 and onwards. Oh, in order for me to feel like a better person, I'm going to have to put you down for your decision. Black and white thinking. Why? What if their decision is the right one for them and your decision is the right one for you? How about that? Is that a possibility? Can't we all just live in harmony? No, you have to villainize the other. The amount of othering that happens with the binary is so upsetting to my system. And that's the problem I had with this movie, was othering. There was rarely a place where they came together, not just sexually, but just in terms of overlapping on their vision. It was still a battle of the sexes, but it's like, oh, come on, you guys, like, really, this is what you think is woke? A battle of the sexes in 2023? That's not what are we really doing that still? Like, it's embarrassing, nearly. Like, I walked out of that movie being like, okay, I was super entertained, loved the paint, loved the things, loved to die. I have a filmmaker lens, so I look through all the things like the script, the movie, all of it. And I was like, oh, groan around the gender relations piece, because I was like, this is going to be very problematic, because now all the young girls are watching this movie, and also the older people, right? Because literally everyone. I mean, we had like toddlers in the movie theater, which I'm sure they were like, patriarchy, what is that? So it was really a quote unquote family movie, and with actually very complicated, nuanced concepts that I don't think most kids will understand. But the ones who, say teenagers and up, Like it's just gonna be reconfirmed in their system that this is what gender relations should be. And there is such an asexualization happening in our Western world between technology. I mean, I'm on the dating apps. I've been like aggressively dating recently. I don't know, I'm in a phase. And like, I find it to be fascinating as a social experiment. It's very tiring otherwise, but like, it's very fascinating as a social experiment. So you start to see how even people in my age range, okay, not even the younger one, like, we're just getting, it's like so much harder to, it feels more challenging to be like human contact in person, physical touch, right? Like part of that is also what happened in the last few years for us as a society. So it's a combination of like tech, also now with AI showing up with, what do they call those? Those like glasses where you can, virtual reality glasses, right? Like the combo of AI, virtual reality glasses, like you understand how many people are going to start to get their needs met through this like virtual reality version of relationship instead of actual humans. So there's also this way in which we're just heading in the direction of less and less and less sex, which, you know, you can argue from a big picture perspective, maybe is how nature is balancing out overpopulation. Like we're just all having less sex. It's also costs too much money to have a kid. Anyways, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent over here, but like, so maybe it's nature doing its thing and she knows exactly what she's doing and all's well. And how much does it suck that we're not having as much sex and there's more asexualizing happening? The fact that there's a lot of people who identify as asexual. I feel like there was another term for it. Sorry, not up to date in my 40s, guys. But I feel like there was another term that was developed. You know, there's also one about like, oh, I don't remember the name of it, but it's like all about like, oh, I get turned on through like mental stimulation. I forget. Someone tell me what it is. And I just think it's interesting because the combo of like asexual, getting turned on by mental stimulation, again, these might be people's like actual experiences. I'm not negating that. But why are they happening? Why do they now exist? It's because of the way our worlds are shifting, our lifestyle is shifting. And our primal bodies are literally created, designed by nature to have sex. Like that is the number one thing. So I just think it's interesting that that whole movie, no one was having sex. There wasn't discussion. I mean, there was that one joke about like, oh, maybe I'll stay over. And she's like, but why? And he's like, I don't know. It's like they literally don't even know about sex in that world. So if we want to have good sex, and if you don't, cool, then I don't think you have to worry about this piece. But for those of us who still want to have ecstatic, erotic, life changing, like cosmically mind blowing, like out of this world, holy shit, I am the entire universe is me sex, which is truly the reason why I'm alive, that and good food. It's like, if that's what we want, like we cannot keep reiterating this old pattern of the binary of I can only win if you lose, you can only win if I lose. And specifically around gender relations, when we are talking about men, women, the systems we live in, the society we live in, and then, of course, for those of us who have sex with men and women and want to be in partnership with each other, we have to understand that it's not this or that we can both elevate each other. And this is why a lot of the relationship and intimacy work that I do is so exciting and important to me, is because I've seen it. I've seen it in my own relationships, the beauty that comes with elevating each other. You know, my former partner and I, still deeply in each other's lives, every day we try to elevate each other. Even not as romantic partners, but just as man and woman, we try to elevate each other. I still look at him with wonder and awe and like, wow, you're so powerful. He still looks at me every single time he sees me. He's like, you are so beautiful. And I can, and he'll compliment me when he feels my heart and, et cetera, et cetera. Point is, we can elevate each other. I try so hard to walk around in the world, and I'm not saying I'm great at it, because yes, there's times when the men are disappointing me and I get mad about it and bitter. That is correct. And I try my best to hold the frame of all of these men are so powerful and are amazing, and their power does not need to look like my power. Sometimes we're the same, sometimes we're very different, but we both get to be powerful at the same time in different ways if need be, and we both get to elevate each other in our power. It's nearly like, okay, well, sisterhood, like everyone's always talking about, like, well, in feminism even, like, I can be powerful and my girlfriend can be powerful, like no competition. Okay, great. And why are we still competing with the men? Like this movie was literally the women and the men competing. Like why? Why are we doing that? It makes no sense. We've learned amongst women that we can elevate each other by celebrating, oh, my sister here, my da da da, and it's like, what about the men? Yes, patriarchy, it sucked. It went on for way too long. They really, really like screwed us over. And can part of us feeling empowered be that we don't do the same thing over again as a revenge, as a way to get back? And instead go, okay, great. Now we're going to show you a different way. Can we do that? Because there is a way. I just want to go back to that Ken moment where he got asked the time as I close this episode. Like, there was something that, like, it felt like a dagger into my heart in that scene, which was just supposed to be like a comedic scene, like no big deal. But this moment where he was like, oh my God, they asked me for the time, I feel respected. And it hurt because actually in this quote unquote more evolved, progressive, whatever you want to call it, version of the world right now, in the Western world specifically, men are having that experience, and it hurts me to know that they are like, wait, hold on, I can still be respected. When I tell a man that I'm dating, right, like I told you guys I was aggressively dating, I'm like, hey, I'd really love for you to lead on this. There's nearly a moment that I see in their faces that's like Ken in that scene, where they're like, wait, what? You respect me and trust me enough to let me lead you? And I'm like, yep. Like, please do. I want that. My system actually really likes that. I may have some work on surrender that I have to do, but you know what I mean? Like that's a little bit of a consequence of the feminism and the binary that I did grow up in. But yes, I want you to lead. And yes, I respect you. And yes, I see you as powerful. And yes, I can see you as powerful while maintaining my own power. And I think that that is actually the key. Barbie does not have to make Ken an idiot to feel empowered. We do not have to look down at these men to feel better about ourselves. We do not need to look down at anyone to feel better about ourselves. I mean, let's talk about what's in the zeitgeist right now, right? Like that whole Jonah Hill scandal, controversy, whatever you want to call it, with his girlfriend. I saw how much a lot of these quote unquote progressive women were like, yeah, get it, girl. So for anyone who has no context, real quick, I guess Jonah Hill, I learned all of this by reading an article, but like Jonah Hill was in a relationship with a surfer girlfriend. I guess she was like a professional surfer. I don't really know the details. And she, after they broke up, like she basically released some screenshots of different texts between them, and in one of them he was basically saying like, you're gonna have to take off of your Instagram some photos of, you know, your butt in a thong or something like that. And she was like, what? You know, and of course all the very progressive women came running towards her and being like, sisterhood, feminism, like, of course she what an asshole, we need to cancel him, like she's in it, like she's right, basically. I don't know how else to say it. And listen, first of all, we don't have all the context, but it didn't look great, right? Like, and it sounded like a pretty misogynistic, messed up thing to ask your girlfriend to do. And the truth is, if I was in her shoes and a guy told me that, I would be like, and we're done, right? Because yeah, I don't want you policing my body or my expression on Instagram. Like, what? No. And he's got a right to make any demands he wants in a relationship, and knowing that the consequences may be that that person is like, like he gets to go, hey, these are my needs. And she gets to go, oh, I can't meet them actually. And I think that I'm judging you about them. And I think that that sucks. And I think that you really need to go like look at yourself and your misogynistic tendencies. And maybe that's all right. But our problem is then the witch hunting that happens, right? Like, so women are no longer taking self-responsibility and just going like, okay, I'm going to hold my boundary, I'm going to end things with you, and then I'm going to work on this myself, instead of have to process it, like throw him into like the cancel culture world, and then just be like, look at him, he sucks, can you all get mad at him for me? It's like, well, what? Like, now we're doing the witch hunts on the men. And I know it's not exactly the same thing, because what he did say was not ideal. Let's be real. I do not want to date someone like that. And why can't you just privately hold your own ground? Do you not trust your own power enough, your own boundaries? That's my concern. Is why did you have to throw him under the bus for you to feel powerful? Why did you have to make it a public witch hunt and a cancellation situation in order for you to feel okay that you did that? Did you not trust your own instinct that like, yeah, actually he sucks and like I should just end things with him? Like, why does it have to be this whole hoopla out in the world these days? And this goes back to that thing of like, why do I have to make the other person look bad in order for me to feel good? Like, you don't. Just, you're good. You're good. Trust your own path and your own choices and your own boundaries and your own instincts. So I just think that there is like, we're not heading in the right direction with the whole gender relations and the like putting the men down and canceling them, and not to be confused with exposing shit that's fucked up, that, you know, people who need to go to jail, like Harvey Weinstein, thank God, you know. And also, like anything else, swinging the pendulum in any direction too far is no bueno for anyone, whether it's the Me Too movement, whether it's feminism, whether it's the binary. Like, it's not actually going to help anyone to live in a Barbie land. That is not the panacea that it was painted out to be. Like, oh yay, all the women, everyone's happy and powerful and wearing cute outfits. Also, no sex, the men suck. Like, that's not the world I want to live in. I don't want to live in Barbie land, and I don't want to live in the real world that they showed either, that is like 90s patriarchy. And there's another way, and I'm sad that this movie didn't have enough nuance to be able to bring that piece in. But I get it. It's also a blockbuster film. But the problem is, such a blockbuster film is what is going to taint our perspective for a really long time. It's going to be one of those movies that are going to be talked about for a long time. A lot of girls are going to remember this movie, and they're going to remember the plot line of this movie, and it is going to have an impact. So on some level, Greta Gerwig had a very strong responsibility, not just her, but the creatives of the movie as a whole, the producers, the writers, everyone, to really think through what are we actually saying through this iconic piece of media, and is it nuanced enough, truly? Because I want Barbie to have her fun, to be president. I also want Ken to have his horses and to feel respected. It's really not that much, or is it? I will say, though, in closing, that my favorite moment where I could not stop laughing out loud, just to bring it back to lightness, was the Indigo Girls, Closer to Fine, playing every single time Barbie would leave and come back to Barbie Land. I just found that to be such a great detail that I'm not sure, who picked up on that. I think a significant amount of women, but I know that I was the only one that was laughing out loud in the theater, and I was a little bit surprised by that, especially that it was a theater in Boulder, Colorado, of all places, like the most, I don't know, somewhere where I would think most people would listen to Indigo Girls. But maybe that's just an assumption. All right, I hope this episode had you think a little bit. I'm curious to hear your thoughts always. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.
I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening. We would love for you to rate and review the show, and I'd love to know your takeaways from the episode. You can do that by DMing me on Instagram at Nadia Munla.